Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining another 4D Method user group. This is the international 4D user group. I'll describe a little bit more about what it is later on, but today is January 24th, 2024. This is our first meeting of the year. Thanks again for joining meeting number 69. We're getting up there in meeting age. Almost time for our 70th, which is going to be a big celebration, hopefully. So today I'll talk a little bit about 4D Method, what we're doing here, talk about some of the upcoming user group presentations and open dates for this year. Kirk Brooks will talk to us a little bit about what's been going on in the 4D happy hour. We'll get some 4D news from Jim Sobczak, and I'll review some of the recent 4D blog articles. Always great stuff coming out in the 4D blog about new features and new releases. Then we'll have Ad join us to talk about a couple of the latest tech notes in the knowledge base, and then we'll get to the good stuff. The special topic, Travis Miles from Sweetwater will present to us on what's on the menu, simplifying menu construction. So should be a great topic and a lot of interesting stuff to talk about there. My name is Brent Raymond. I organize the 4D Method 4D user group, and the website for the user group can be found at 4dmethod.com. I can be reached at 4dmethod@gmail.com. I've been doing 4D development for many years, and I enjoy it, and I really like seeing what other people are doing with 4D and what roles 4D applications are playing out in the world. So I organize the 4D Method 4D user group, where we try to bring together the scattered community of developers in the world and users of 4D applications to share programming techniques and just to see what 4D's doing and how it's deployed out in the world. It's a great place to find 4D development support. All of the great 4D developers at some point, I'd like to think at least check in on the 4D Method user group. So if you're looking for support for your app, feel free to reach out and find out who's available to help. And it's just nice place to every so often see demonstrations of what can be done with 4D. There's so much that can be done. Oftentimes, I find that it's almost never do I find that 4D is not capable of some of the things that we're pressed to do with it. And you could get great ideas from these presentations. So this is your 4D support community. And you can be a presenter. This is your group as much as anyone else's, and it's a great place to show off some of your programming chops. On March 13th, we're going to get another demonstration from Dougie, J. Douglas Cryer, his ULO component, user listing with Orda, and how he's now taken it all online. So he's got a very flexible interface that he uses with a multitude of different customers and different businesses. And that same interface and all of its flexibility is being adapted to the web. You can see what's on the schedule at 4dmethod.com/schedule. And I've added all the open dates for this year, 2024. You can see them on there, and if you've got some ideas of things to show off, if you've got components and plugins that you'd like to generate some interest in, if you just like a little 4D street cred to show off how cool your code is, this is a great place to do it. Or you can also, instead of doing it live, which always is interesting in its own regard, you can also just record a short demo to be shared and featured on the 4D Method YouTube channel and on the website. So again, check out the schedule. A lot of open dates. I'm real excited to see what kind of ideas and what what great content is going to be presented this year. Now I'm going to hand it over to Kirk. We do these meetings every 6 to 8 weeks, but it's not the only thing going on in the 4D community. There's great weekly events called the 4D Happy Hour.
Thank you, Brent. And we're here every Friday afternoon, 3:30 Pacific time for, the time varies, frankly. Sometimes recently we've been stretching on pretty good to cover a number of things, ranging from discussions about the 4D environment, the 4D world. This is one of the few places that you can come just to talk to working developers and ask questions about being a developer, ask questions about the business of 4D. Jim has even dropped in sometimes, although we try not to pick on him and make him the representative for 4D. But it's helpful to be able to just talk about this environment that we work in. Many of us have been doing it for decades at this point. And the questions and the content ranges from, as I say, talking about developing, talking about how to get clients, how to work with clients, talking about what kind of projects we're doing, showing up with just interesting stuff that we think is kind of cool. In fact, Travis stopped by last Friday and gave us a little taste of the upcoming demo, which was very cool. Folks come in sometimes with issues. A couple of guys have been had some really interesting just things they were trying to sort out. And if you don't have access to, for example, a whole bunch of knowledgeable people to do code reviews for you, stop in the happy hour and share a screen, and you'll certainly get some opinions and generally some pretty good feedback about, if not something that's going to solve the problem, at least, different takes on it. Because that's the most gratifying thing I think I've noticed about 4D Happy Hour over the years we've been doing it now is almost every week I come away looking at something, and found something that I didn't know anything about. I've been doing 4D a long time. And I think a lot of folks who come there have experienced that same thing. It's like no matter how experienced you are, no matter how good you are, somebody is going to have something else that you didn't think of yet or you just never looked at. And, frankly, it's not that easy to find a good conversation with 4D nerds. So I invite you all to stop by anytime from 3:30. Usually we go for at least an hour and a half, sometimes a couple hours, sometimes longer. Come by, say hello, or just hang out and see what it's about for a little bit.
Thanks, Kirk. Yeah, no, it is, as you said, a great place to come and nerd out or just to hang out. And even if you don't have any issues or problems that you're working on, it's you can even lurk and just see what the chit chat's all about. So thanks so much for the idea of the happy hour and for continuing to host it every week.
See you there.
Yeah. And now some news from 4D with Jim Sobczak, the VP of Sales and Services and the OEM Manager.
Yes, thank you, Brent, and great to see you again. Greetings, everyone, and Happy New Year. I'd like to thank you, Brent, for organizing these meetings as always and inviting Ad and myself to participate. We really enjoy doing these. We're looking forward to Travis's presentation as much as everyone here on simplifying menu construction. As you may know, Travis is part of the excellent 4D developer team at Sweetwater, which is a large group of people. And I see there's other people here from that development team in the meeting too. That's cool. Sweetwater deploys the largest number of concurrent users on one 4D server in the entire United States. It's about 1,200 users. They hit a high concurrently, and Travis has a lot to do with keeping that running smoothly. And it's quite a success story, and he's a big part of it. So we're really proud of our partnership with Sweetwater. Just a little bit about my background slide. the background, not my background, but the Zoom background. I have the San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge there because of the upcoming NFC Championship game this weekend. Our San Francisco 49ers are back in the NFC Championship game against the Detroit Lions. So it should be quite a battle to see who gets to go to the Super Bowl in a couple of weeks. So that's why I have that picture there. We're looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward,
Okay,
I'm looking forward to seeing you guys there too, Jim. Kansas City
thank
Chiefs.
you. All
Forward to
right.
seeing you there again.
Uh-oh.
Thank you, Tim. It's
If
good
we
to have
if we
another.
make it, if we make it, we got to win too.
Yeah, it's good to have another fan. Although it's great to see Detroit get in there too. And I heard that the last game they had, it donated a lot of money to their economy in Detroit. So it was really cool. Okay, back to 4Ds. So yeah, we're kicking off the new year here, and we're kicking off our 40th year at 4D. This is our 40th year in existence. So we're really proud of that. You'll be hearing much more about that as the year progresses. We're getting back into the swing of things after the holidays. Partnership renewals is a big thing for us right now for 2024. Remember that your partner licenses will expire on February 1st. So if you haven't renewed your partnership by then, you will no longer have access to your developer edition. So make sure you give your salesperson a call and renew your partnership. One of the advantages of the partner program, of course, is the partner newsletter, which went out this week, one of our largest. So really happy to see that. Major events at 4D, of course, we had the release of V20R3 on January 8th. I know Brent has a slide with that, and I don't want to step on his toes about what he wants to talk about on V20R3. But there is a release webinar tomorrow, and we do this after the release of every our feature release version of 4D. It's a great review of the new features in V20R3. Will and add put a lot of work in this. It's tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So we've already had over 100 registrations for the event tomorrow. So please attend if you can. You can sign up on 4D.com. We also do these release webinars at 4D Germany and 4D France as well. But yeah, it just seems like every webinar we do, we get more and more people. So it's great to have you folks in that. So with the release of a new R version, a feature release version, a couple of days later, we released the beta of the next R version. So we released V20R4 beta 2 days after the release of V20R3. So if you follow the blog, most of the new blog posts, and I think there's about 15 of them, will be on V20R4 beta. So you'll be able to see the new versions that are coming out in R4 that will be released in about 3 months or so. So please go back to that blog site because we're releasing new blogs all the time. And then I did want to mention on-demand training. For those of you who were not able to attend the 4D Summit last year, all the master classes are now available on demand in the 4D store. So if you go to store.4d.com, you click on demand, you'll see the master classes listed there in the advanced training section of that tab. That includes ads, excellent session on scaling your web server, and the stellar presentation by Marie-Sophie on Codely Studio, which is generating a lot of interest from our 4D developers. So, and if you are interested in Codely Studio, of course, there's a lot of blog posts about that. So I hope the people on this call are at least taking a look at Codely Studio and reading some of the blog posts and seeing what it's all about, because it's a great product, a great way to enhance your 4D application. So yeah, that's about it for me, Brent.
Okay.
And so I'll kick it back to you. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, well, thank you, Jim, and thanks to you and 4D for always being available for these meetings. I was just looking back at one from, I think it was 8 or 9 years ago, and you know, it's yeah, it's amazing that I believe 4D has always been available in these meetings, and you're a big part of that primarily. Really appreciate the support and all the news and new information. Coming back to the summit videos here, even if you were at the summit, oftentimes it's very difficult to absorb all of the new information and to see, to understand everything that you're seeing over the sessions in the 2 days. And sometimes you might get distracted talking to other developers about what's being presented. And so it's been a great thing to go back and review the sessions that were presented at the summit and wrap your head around all of the excellent content. So it's nice to see that those are now available for us to study up on. Right, and then as Jim mentioned, the version 20 R3 was officially released, and we've talked a fair amount about some of these features. I'll just review a few important points. The inline variable declaration, which is very interesting for can change some of our coding styles. It's important to note that in this release, the PHP commands have been deprecated, and the interpreter that used to be packaged in and able to be natively called within the 4D language has been removed. It doesn't mean you can't do stuff with PHP. You just might have a couple more steps to be able to do that. Another big change, the global stamps for tracking data changes. That's something you do have to enable, I believe, per table, but that's a nice offering for 4D applications that you not only for tracking changes for each record and for each table, but for also optimizing the sending data over the wire. This was a feature that was a central part of the 4D for mobile data synchronization. So now we can take advantage of that feature in our own applications in various ways that I'm sure we'll find to use it. They've added more the ability to inject your own headers into WebSocket client connections, which is necessary at times. They've also enhanced the Visual Studio Code implementation so that you can have a hotkey or go directly to the documentation for code, which is nice in the 4D editor, that you can do a quick F1 or Command K or whatever you've set your shortcuts to bounce directly to the documentation. Now you can do that directly out of Visual Studio Code. And last but not least, the 4D Write Pro PDF-A format, which allows file inclusion in a PDF. And I'll get to a little bit about why that's significant in the next slide. As Jim mentioned, most of the latest articles coming out of the blog, 4D blog at blog.4d.com, the latest articles tend to focus on the R version that is currently either just released or the beta R version that's available at the time. And there's a lot of great stuff in R4. They just keep on cranking it out. Just start with a very simple one, to be able to export the structure, your 4D data structure, as HTML instead of XML. And in this case, it also includes the relationship information like relationship names, which are very significant when you are working with Orda. Then another article on streamlined method parameter declarations. I like this one. This is a good one. So if you're using the hash declare syntax for your parameter declaration in your methods, previously you would also have to have a compiler method, or 4D would generate it for you. But many of us maintain our own compiler methods. and declare the parameters for your methods directly in compiler methods. If you're using declare, it's no longer necessary, which is nice. That's just removes a step for adding new code and whatnot, and maintenance, and possible ways that you can set yourself up for compiler errors if they don't match. See, they don't need to match. They don't even need to exist anymore. Then this is always nice. They've added support for ECDSA certificates. Many of us, myself included, don't know what ECDSA is, but now it's supported. No, it's just another type of certificate that is gaining in popularity or in deployment out in the world. And now it's, we're ahead of the game because we can support that in our installations with this release, with just popping it right in, just like we do with our old with our other certs. Then this is quite cool, especially if you are in Europe, which is starting to require this e-invoice, varying different formats of e-invoices for standardization of sending electronic invoices. Well, instead of having to worry about building the format, the required standardized format for these e-invoices, you can export them directly out of 4D Write Pro, including with the new supported PDF format. You can have the required added, required if necessary, I guess, but you can have effectively attachments built into the PDFs that get generated, say with raw data that can be consumed in electronic or in machine format. So that is also quite cool. Looks like these are a couple of things that are on the next slide. So we'll just jump to that. A new way to handle errors. We now finally get to try, just like we have you see in some other languages, Python and whatnot. You can wrap code functions and whatnot in a try statement, so that and then you can handle any errors that might have been generated by what happened in that try statement, sort of an encapsulation of a piece of code that you can you're not certain is always going to work under every condition, and then you can handle the last errors, which gives you a collection of errors that were generated in the try. So that's pretty nice to have. I think currently it's one line for the try, but multi-line is said to be on the way in the blog article. I don't think I'm reading that wrong. I would hope so. But that's a nice addition to the language. I know that we've had some chatter on the forum about how to make that possible. Well, now it's going to be native in 20R4. The live code checker functionality. Well, now when you're writing in 4D classes, which I find myself writing code in 4D classes more and more and more, and calling said code from the interface, but and from elsewhere in the application. Well, now if you're writing code in classes, it's actually live, checking the errors live as you type. Basically, it was doing something to that effect before, but now it is the same results you would get out of the 4D compiler, which is groovy. We have a question: will the code live checker be available in VS Code through the 4D language server? That is a good question. I don't know. Maybe Ad can answer that when he's on later. But that's definitely a good question. We'll try to see if we can ask him that when later when we get through this here. There's another few important articles here. Auto-generated SSL and TLS certificates for client-server communications. This is only client-server, but this is a real great security offering for your client-server connections. You can have specific certs, but on every restart, 4D can also generate new certs for your client server connection. So that is really good security. Most people aren't swapping out their certs on such frequency. So not only do you not need to make your own certs, 4D will automatically randomize your certs for your client server connections and encrypted connections. Also in 20R4, the printing is no longer blocking, or can no longer be blocking anyways. It depends on a compatibility setting. It's not something you just want to flip on without reviewing your code and how the print options are set for your print jobs, because the print options will be not a application-wide setting now. They will be per process. But that's a big deal for optimization and for places that are cranking out a bunch of invoices and that kind of thing. Having non-blocking processes, especially if you're on the server, is going to be very impactful. And last but not least, this came out today. So I said, I think I should add it. It's a pretty cool one, in my humble opinion. The title of the article is Tailored Customization for Dates and Times. So this affects the string command, object set format, and in the interface, you can use widely documented abbreviations for date and time formats. You can see in the little snippet here, you can the QQQQ does second quarter from a date. Capital D gives you the day of the year. It's all localized. It's all stuff that oftentimes we're asked to have these flexible formats either in our APIs or in our interfaces, and we have oftentimes had to roll them ourselves and include that functionality. So now a very wide variety of these format strings can be supported, and yeah, that's a very nice thing to have available now for working with dates and times in our interface. So okay, yeah, so that's a lot in R4. A lot of good reason to get up on these R versions, R3 and R4, and there's a lot more great material aside from the 4D blog, but also in the knowledge base. I'm going to hand it over to Ad here to talk about a couple of the recent tech notes that again I think just came out yesterday.
Thank you, Brett, and Happy New Year to everybody. Just want to start out with giving you some updates from our previous year. Every time when we release a tech note, we trying to focus on giving you the latest content as well as all relevant information about 4D technology. I think last year we did a pretty good job. We usually aim for 24 tech notes per year due to some hiccups on internally. So we were able to hit number 22. We missed two tech notes from last year. So hopefully we'll do better this year. Again, we'll start off with two tech notes in January. Just came out yesterday, and just like everything else that we do, anytime that we have some latest info technologies, latest features in 4D. We're trying to push that in terms of how to use it effectively, and Technote is one of the better way to approach that. So the first Technotes on the top there, that's generating barcodes and QR codes with 4D View Pro. Now, last year we actually did a Technote that covers QR codes generation from 4D. That at the time we were limited by technologies. So the Technote was using an external framework. It's an open source JavaScript library, which can be executed from within 4D. Now, that we have the feature built into 4D View Pro. I think native is always better. We know that this is going to be a longevity, something that we're going to support and continue to support for many, many years. So 4D View Pro now can offer you several barcodes and QR codes to be generated directly from 4D. And the author of the Technote is Tai Bui, one of our senior technical staff, put together a really unique and a very extensive content in terms of how to use this feature. Includes several examples which you can adapt and then put into your own projects. Okay, so hopefully you'll find a very good use out of this. I know that the QR code and barcodes generation, it's been around a long time, except that now it is easy to implement and making it generate directly from 4D application. The next Technote covers I think Ben,
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I got a typo. But
that's okay. No worries.
I was too busy reading the tech note because it's so cool. Yeah, I'll try to replace that in the shared PDF after the meeting. But yeah, go ahead.
No worries. So the second Technote covers the WebSocket client features. The title of the Technote is Visualize Real-Time Data with WebSocket Client and 4D View Pro. Now, 4D View Pro again is becoming one of the key feature that we are focusing for this Technote. Nat Do is one of our technical staffs here. Again, a few years ago, he wrote a Technote that deals with data visualization using 4D as 4D View Pro to display information in the form of dashboard. Now we're combining these two concepts with the WebSocket client header, options available in R3. We want to make sure that you kind of see how it can be used in different contexts. Last year, Thomas Mall did a presentation on how to integrate a WebSocket server from within 4D, allowing a client to connect to 4D through WebSocket. Within this Technote is a little bit different context. Now 4D is acting as a client, talking to a WebSocket server out there. In this case, well, we're using a Bitcoin tracking service out there, allowing us to get the real-time data into 4D through WebSocket client. And we're using 4D View Pro to display that information in real time. So as you go through the exercise and demo, you'll see that the information will get pulled in to 4D very quickly and at real time. And the integration and all of the features that you are seeing is basically native. We're not using anything externally except that we are talking to external service, and that's it. Again, this is one of the benefit about having all of these features in 4D now. You have many options to expand and implement in terms of functionality into your own application. So hopefully you enjoy this two Technotes, and we'll continue to pump out more Technotes every month. And stay tuned. Every time when we publish Technotes now, I see that some of you guys have provide us with some feedbacks. whether there's some some good thing to say about it, or any comments or things that we can do better. They're all welcome. Okay. All right. That's all from me.
Thanks, Ed, and thanks to your team for putting these together. And please apologize to them for the typos, but
No worries.
nonetheless, I mean, it's I love the WebSocket demo. It hooks up, registers 4D with Coinbase, and Coinbase pushes. You can see in this snapshot here the latest 10 transactions for Bitcoin, so you can actually see live if the value is going up, if it's crashing, and it just ought to really introduce some or give people some great ideas of how they can use these WebSocket client connections. Say if you've got sports data or something to that effect, stock market information, where you can connect to a service and present it in your application. It very cool, and also it's a wealth of information in the barcode and QR code tech note, where they can they've encapsulated the ability to make to use all of the different options for different kinds of barcodes. Well, they've broken it all down within the functions in View Pro to access all those functionalities. So very cool stuff, and really appreciate all of the work that Ad's team does on this kind of thing. So thanks again, and let's get to the main presentation here. Today we have Travis Miles from Sweetwater. Travis grew up in the Mojave Desert in California and went to college in Utah. And after school, he started his career as an electronic technician in oil fracking for Halliburton in Colorado. I think we'll all appreciate that he's now working for a music company, or maybe not music company, but selling musical instruments. But Travis has a legacy of software development, with his father being a developer for the DoD, the U.S. Department of Defense. Travis eventually found his own way to software development and started as a 4D professional with Sweetwater only 4 years ago. He worked his way up from simple bug fixes in the interface to addressing system-wide issues, scalability, and performance. And as he stated, his greatest joy at work is addressing technical debt, like trimming unused code, forms, variables, and database structures. And all of us with legacy applications know that refactoring code and cleaning up projects is a big part of working and improving these systems. And so it's an important role to be able to move the project forward. He's been involved in major improvements in the Sweetwater applications, including project mode, switching network layers, load testing, and major 4D upgrades. He lived in Chile for 2 years. He's been to the tallest and the lowest points in the continental US many times, but this is his first time presenting to 4DMethod. Which is either a new high or a new low. I don't know, but please welcome Travis Miles from Sweetwater to talk to us about simplifying menu construction.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction there. Yeah, it's definitely a high. So.
Good. Glad to hear that.
Yeah, that's just a little bit about me. I figured some nice little tidbits there would be fun.
Yeah.
So, I'll give you some context to start here. I don't have any slides. It's going to be a kind of a smaller demo showing mostly code. But the context here is I started at Sweetwater and we had 2.5 million lines of code to dig through. As a new developer, that's a lot to dig through. You jump in fixing bugs, but understanding the whole application at that scale is very difficult. Something that always plagued me was when we touched menus. We had very complicated menus. We had over 20 of them set in our static toolbar in the toolbox. If you're familiar with setting up menus, it's under the designer toolbox. And of those 20, all of them would be set and then immediately touched again with many of those menu commands. You have like setting icons, setting shortcuts, setting the mark, setting all kinds of things tied to each of those menu items. And so navigating that was always very painful. And many of the bugs that I encountered when I started were related to menus. Somebody had edited something, but touched the wrong index on a menu and it broke something, or gave permission to somebody in our company access to a report or a button that they shouldn't have been able to access, causing some issues in the company and some problems here and there. One even caused our server to crash several times because somebody was running a report they ought not to have been. And so I looked at menus for a long time in the last 4 years, and I tried to make something that would make it simpler to manage going forward, given how complicated our menus are. That's the idea behind all of this presentation. So with that,
Great.
uh,
I'll hand
if
over
I could share the screen.
Yep, go ahead.
All right, everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Cool. So here's a little example database. It should be shared. I shared it to Brent. Hopefully we get that up to the GitLab repo or shared so that anybody can access this. I want everybody to be able to touch this and copy it or play with it or change it however you see fit. I just want to try to make menus a little easier for people to manage. I found that doing this made a week's worth of effort kind of become minutes to an hour, which was very helpful in almost all of our menu refactors since then. So I'll give a little context here. I have this main method here that actually starts up when you start the application. It has this nice demonstration that kind of walks you through each of the pieces that I'm showing. This also starts up with the application, and then this nice choose box here that shows all of these cases in this method. And so I'll just walk through each of these here, explaining each of these different menu types and kind of the thought process behind them. Please stop me for questions if you have any.
Okay.
So,
And I'll get a link to this source code for anybody who wants to play along at home here in a moment. So I'll just pop it in the chat.
thanks, Brent. So 4D has this nice documentation here. They almost all of the commands have good documentation of how to implement it with some bit of code to demonstrate it. So I've taken all of the menu items that I could and looked at the actual documentation here and showed an example. So this one here is a nice example of a pop-up menu, how you implement a pop-up menu, and some of the options you have with pop-up menu. So you can see this pop-up menu started here. This is a simple one. You can imagine these would be some of your tables here, an option with some separators, italicized with a check mark. So if you look in here, this is what they have, or similar to what they have up on the documentation. So in here, you would set up your options here with your formats, your separators. Here would be something to add your tables to it. I add these ones manually since I don't have a database associated to this project. And then you just display the pop-up. It gives you a choice that you chose, which is just a numeric. And then you would choose to do some code based off your choice. So this is how many of us messed around with pop-up menus. Something that I found helpful when we were working with pop-up menus was describing them as either an array, and then you have some type of join function right here. I just use array to collection and then a simple join. And so you can think of each element in the array as one of these options here. And so you could actually compare the options directly by comparing that element of the array. So if you had something that you wanted to know, this is for invoices, it just makes reading this option a little easier in the code base. Because you get a big method with a lot of pop-up choices. You're like, what is option 3 again? What is option 2 again? What is option 1 again? And so it's kind of nice to pull the array in, put the index in to get the actual text string back out. And so we've implemented this through our system several times for very big pop-up menus or things that we want to be able to clearly to see this. And then if you ever change indexes too, it makes it much simpler so you don't have to go back through and update each of these indexes. You can do it with collections. This is an example of how you would do it with a collection here. Very similar to how you do it with array. And so I'll demonstrate that here. So here's with collection. It looks just the same. You would select an option. It would do that option for you. Then here's the same thing with collection. And so those aren't really that hard though. These aren't really complicated menus. The simple version is usually just fine for basic pop-up menus. But for the complicated ones, it is helpful to kind of see what your index is accessing here. So next, I talk about the static menus. So when I say static menus, I mean the toolbox, and you have menus. So you can instantiate menus here, create them. You can add menu items to them with special settings here. Now, the enabled or disabled is bound to kind of the old idea of user groups. And in project mode, it's not really that helpful anymore to really think of user groups, especially how we had it set up here at Sweetwater. We kind of just alias everybody and use Active Directory or something to log in as. So this didn't really help us for enabling or disabling menu items by permission. So our static menus became this slew of static menus that we were building here. And then immediately afterwards, we would call some update function to go and remove things based off your permission or disable things based off your permission. It became very complicated to manage. Some of those update methods are hundreds, if not thousands, of lines of code, all calling different menu commands, some of them by index, not by name. So they're very prone to breaking or setting the wrong menu item, which is very dangerous and caused many a bug. So here's an example of just a static menu, one that you'd probably implement to just call a request. Because if you didn't know, request doesn't allow copy paste. So 6, something you would probably implement is just a simple copy paste. That way I could let me pull up just like a simple example here. Here, I'll just throw complicated in there. So you can copy, you can select all, you can cut, you can undo, and your request will see that change. So these are pretty useful for setting up basic menus, but as soon as you get something more complicated, they become a little unwieldy. So here, line 7. So you can see some of the issues that come when you're deleting menu items based by index. I'll show just a basic menu here. So I have this basic menu with, you can imagine these are some reports. Based on permission, you should or shouldn't be allowed to see some of these. Some of them will be disabled, some of them won't even be in the menu. I'll leave that up over here. Or actually, I won't. So here. So here is the reports menu here. You can see that here. A simple edit menu with some shortcuts. Here you're going to see that we delete the element, removing this element, then you can see if I look at in the debugger here, you can see we're going to remove the element now. So that element was removed. Then we'll remove the spacer. You see we remove the spacer. It's no longer visible up here. But then you can see we're disabling nothing because it no longer exists. And this is where we ran into issues. This is supposed to be disabling this open purchase orders, and it won't. Because you can imagine somebody updated your bit of code here to just remove this part, but didn't change this index of any of the following code. So it's very prone to errors if you're using by index to update a menu.
And it's not easy to understand without commenting it, and then if anything changes, then you got to update all the comments as well. So
And so I wrote these actually before project mode, before we had classes. So these little methods that I'm showing here, this mvalidate, this mupdate, and mcreate, were the methods I made for managing menus before we even had classes. I have since updated them to a class. But you can see here, this takes your current menu, displays it as a collection that you can navigate through, and it updates. You can run it right here in the debugger, which is nice. That way you don't have to call get menu item and pass in the indexes to see which one your element is. And you don't have to call those commands. You just run this one method from the debugger. It works great. So here I show the example of just using this update one by by name. So we had some ways to do it before where you'd get the menu items and then you would find in an array your element name. But as soon as you start doing this multiple times, it gets a little slow. You're constantly looking at every menu item as an array, then doing a find an array. If you have deep menus or 10 menu bars with submenus, that logic gets a little slow. It takes about a second. And a user starts to notice a second. Try to keep everything under half a second. People don't notice much under half a second. But so here, you will create this nice collection here. And it just stores what your parent title will be. So I'm going to be updating the reports menu. So this group here, I'm going to be setting this gross profit, and I'm going to be deleting it. And I'm going to be deleting the element before it. And so it does a recursive look down each of these different elements for this specific menu item title, removes its element and its previous element. Here's a bit of the code here. You can see it does a search across each of the menu items, sets the enabled state, and calls itself recursively if you're a submenu. So you can go down several menu layers to update this. And it has all the options here. You can set item, mark, enabled state. It'll delete the spacers or previous elements. And so I found this quite helpful in doing updates. So here you can see when I pull this guy back up, you can see it's now set the enabled state to false and removed the correct element and its spacer. So it performed that by just these two lines here and this one call. So this did those two updates, and it did it by element name, not by index. So now if you ever want to add an update here, you don't have to worry about adjusting all of the previous or following indexes so you don't break anything.
that's nice.
And so here, I just show it. Yeah. And I added this debug option for later on in the in the presentation. But so that's just a basics of menu updating and some of the issues you'll run into with
The
when you're messing around with indexes instead of by name.
the helper method itself and the debugger is worth the whole demo alone. It's
Yeah,
yeah.
I find I use that a lot when I'm debugging menus.
Yeah,
So-
no, it's otherwise yeah, you're gonna have to sift through a lot of information to get to that
So-
perspective.
So here's my menu example of how I would build a basic static menu. I'll pop it up here. So this is the example that they have under set menu bar in the 4D docs. It shows you creating a simple file menu, creating a sub menu in that file menu, then creating your actual menu bar, setting the menu bar, and I call it into this form. And so you could see an example of that here. You can see here's the sub menu, find and replace, shown up here. What they don't show is that, yeah, we set this by index here. So you now have to go find that that's the index for this one. Then you have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is the shortcut key for that element. So if I bring this guy back up here, you can see there's the shortcut key. Command R tied to here. So it's kind of hard to see that here in line in code that element 5 is this replace with this shortcut key. It'll take even senior developers a couple seconds, maybe a little bit longer to notice that. For a junior developer, it might take them a minute. So you get some time waste in here just because this looks so complicated. I hit OK. So I try to build it here using collections, because every menu, in my opinion, was just a collection. You can see that every menu is just a list. Just a list of elements. And then every sub menu is also just a list of elements. So I treated everything in menus as a collection, and then every sub menu as a sub collection. And so here, building them is pretty simple. You type in the parameters that you want that will be controlled through one method that's called recursively. You set each of those parameters here. Now you can see readable what this line does. This matches one menu item. So every menu item will be on one line. If you want to reuse something, it's pretty simple. You just extract it out to a method and you just return a collection. So here's that same find and replace menu built inside of a method as a collection.
That's so much more readable than than the example from the documentation even.
And that was my idea. I wanted to make it readable, easy for any junior developer to understand what the change they're trying to apply needs to look like, or what each line is even doing.
Mhm.
And so running it here on line 9, pull it up here. So you can see find and replace looks the same. I've added a couple of extra elements here in my edit menu, so it is a little bit bigger. But you can see it's still got the same elements here, just like the other menu. But readability is definitely improved.
Is there a minimum 4D version that that the demo code should be running?
So if you're going to use the menus, the class, you'll need to be in project mode. And I did this in 19.6, this demo database.
Gotcha.
But you can run these commands, just the project methods, in lower environments.
Nice.
So I tested the commands actually in 18R6.
Nice.
You should be able to use them even before that, though, with the support of collections and objects. What is that? That's V14, 15?
Yeah, I lose track of that. Yeah. It's going
Somewhere in there.
right.
So
Objects
Travis,
is
I have a
14.
question.
Yes.
Travis, I have a question. Click on the edit menu in your menu bar right now. The last two items, start dictation, emoji, and symbols. You don't add those, right?
No, that's
How do
added
those
by the
appear?
OS.
I'm not seeing those show up always. How do those appear?
These are added actually by Mac OS.
Okay, so a certain version of Mac OS will automatically add those to 40 because I'm running an older version of Mac OS
Yep.
and it doesn't auto add those, but newer versions of Mac OS do add those to the 40 edit menu.
Yep. I
Okay.
believe that's OS level on Mac.
Okay. All right, great.
Yep. And I think it's based off of your actual menu name. So if you named it not edit something else, I don't think it will add it.
Okay, great.
Even if you maybe set it to edit with a space, might remove those as a trick to get rid of those. I have not tested that though. That'd be a fun one to test. So here now, so those are pretty simple menus. This is just a simple edit menu. But what if we wanted to get into something more complicated? Something more akin to what we have here at Sweetwater? We'll get into, so I'll give you some context around some of our more complicated menus here at Sweetwater. I'm not going to show anything for proprietary reasons, but we had over 30 different permissions controlling single menu items. They would either enable or remove elements based on that permission. So they'd set them as disabled or remove them. And it's very difficult to adjust all of those permissions because some of them, they were 5 or so with ands and ors based off your permissions. And looking at those elements became very complicated. So here you could see what some of those would look like. You'd have like this big if case, and you only add them here if you have that permission. You can see I have no shortcuts or menu or the method associated to many of these, but you'd have to add each of those lines here as well. So you'd set your item method, you'd set your menu, and you'd have to set that for each of these. So each element's probably 2 to 3 lines per menu item. Then you have to ascertain, okay, based on my permission, is this element here or not? It gets very complicated very quickly the deeper you go. So this is a pretty simple one. I only put 6 permissions. And I have them here so you could easily toggle them in and out by just uncommenting a line. It'll change singular states here to be like if you were sales or a developer or a sales manager or merchandising, merch manager, and executive. So based off of these different things, I have different elements shown in the menu. So here, the developer is pretty much shown everything, but here I'll show some differences here between a salesperson. So here's what a salesperson would see. You can see they don't even have a reports menu. And some of these items, this is 4 elements long, but there's actually 2 here that are hidden to the salesperson. And so I'll show here now what a developer sees. So here you can see I have a reports menu. I also have a designer menu. You can see here there's now 6 options instead of 4. And those are all controlled down here in those lines of code. Kind of hard to notice at first glance that this menu is very dynamic. So you can see here's those 2 elements that are added based off if you are one of these 4 permissions. That's this right here, these 2. And you can see this whole menu element of reports menu is actually controlled here if you're one of these 3 permissions. This menu item, this whole menu bar element is only given to you if you are a developer. So that's hard to see at first glance here. So what I did was I refactored it using collections, and you can see very clearly now each of these elements as single lines. The permission is now set to is enabled or is visible. So you can think of is visible as if it's in the menu item or not. So if it's is visible as false, then it won't even show up in the menu element. All submenus are just also collections. So you can see here I inject this submenu into the file menu. This is how you inject a submenu. Shortcuts, once again, are kind of handled by this guy here. So you can see it's Command N. This is just for simple reading. Really all it does is apply a modifier and a key so that when you call set shortcut element, you have the key associated and the command key mask. And so here, if you wanted to go deep, you could. Heaven forbid you ever do this. Some UI person will be very upset with you. But you can. And it makes it much simpler to go this deep into a menu. I put a nice little quote here for fun from Lord of the Rings, adjusted a little bit here.
Nice.
But yeah, if you go that deep, I'm sure a UI person won't like you. But probably bad UX. But you can. Sometimes the business dictates that you have nested submenus. Managing them becomes much easier here. And then, as I said, if you ever have something that you're reusing everywhere, you can extract it out. So I've extracted my edit menu here, once again, to the same thing here. So I've used this in 3 or 4 places. No need to write it 4 times. And you don't have to worry about passing around a menu reference and then having to destroy that reference to save on memory because it's just a collection. It's got the ref check associated to it already. So
That's nice.
and then I'll get into the actual menu builder here. So this guy, as I said, it's recursive, much like the other ones. So if you're a submenu, it just calls itself and passes down that menu item, which is once again a collection. If you are not a submenu, then it'll go and apply all of these elements based off of your attributes. Here's that shortcut key that I was mentioning. My little wrapper makes it so it's easier to read. All you have to do is Command plus the key, or Command Shift plus the key, or Command Option plus the key. Properties. I have this special property here. I never found a get menu item enabled. There's no command for that. So checking to see if a menu element is enabled. So if I wanted to find out if one of these was enabled or disabled, there's no menu item for that. So I made this custom property and I set it here. This helps a lot for unit testing and debugging. So when I'm in the debugger here, you can see the enabled and disabled state here on each element. And
That's
it's reading
nice.
that custom property
Yeah.
because there's no command for it. That was one of the issues I ran into when I was trying to unit test all these changes.
And the property is embedded in the menu item itself, which is nice. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that little debugger, as you see, reads that menu item property, so it knows the state of it.
Yeah. No, that's groovy just for other properties as well, that you can see those in the debugger.
And so here, if I hit OK, let's pull up the complex menu refactored again. Hit OK. Now we get into, okay, I want to test a menu item change. I have this ticket. I need to remove this element based off a permission, and I need to set this one to disabled. To test that, used to be very difficult. It used to be all manual. There's no way to unit test it. Here now, I can grab using, so this is using the actual class now. They work just the same. I'll show the class here. You can see the logic is almost identical, but I have all the functions built in here now. So here's the update function. Here's that debug function. Probably should have named it debug. I have it named validate because I used it for QA for unit testing. And then you can call dynamic menus, which I'll show next. But you can even set a menu bar, handle releasing, all from this menu class. So back over to here. So I call this, and I grab the validate here, which grabs the collection. I store it here before I do my change. And then I grab it after my change. And we are in the reports menu. And you can see here in the reports menu, you can see that this element was removed and this element was removed. So just right here in the debugger, you can see the difference between those two collections. I didn't really like hunting down collection differences visually. So I made this method here, which takes the difference. And you can see here all the commonalities between the two collections and the differences. So it does both way difference. So the first collection you passed in, here's its differences. And then the second collection passed in its differences. So you can see only this menu reports was changed.
That's nice. And in 4D there is the is equal, but that, yeah, that doesn't tell you exactly what's different about the two, right?
Yes. And so the other thing that it does, I'll show here. So this does use the is equal here. It'll just show everything is common if they're equal. I have this function here to show if objects are equal, because there is no objects are equal command. So this uses the new, this is dependent by version for sure. These
Right.
commands are much newer, but many of us have like a recursive call down objects to check each key value pair is equal. And those functions take a while. But I found this in the newer versions is very quick. It uses the dot equal command off of your object represented as a collection of key value pairs.
That's crafty.
And then if you order them, then your object could be out of order, but still match. So if you have key value pairs in different order, but the values are the same, this will still return true.
That's cool.
Tim Neville saw this in the demo in happy hour and was like, "Ooh, I'm taking a picture of that."
Yeah, I never knew about the OB entries command. Very useful. Very, very useful.
Yeah. So there's also OB keys and OB values. Those are
Yeah.
pretty nice new object functions if you haven't seen them. So I
Yeah.
have this collection diff and I have object diff.
For scalars, you could use a stringify to compare them, but that's not gonna work for some data types, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And so you can't really use the stringify very easily with entities either.
Right.
Or if they're out of order, it'll still mess up.
Mm-hmm.
If there's pointers, it won't really resolve them.
Right.
So
Yeah.
this one will tell you differences across objects. And then I have, yeah, I showed this one. Then there was the I have this collection diff, and then I also have a scalar one that's much simpler. These were mostly used for debugging purposes or for unit testing, but I included them here because I found them valuable. I have a little assert unit test on it, which shows how to use them. So if you do have this, this kind of shows you how to use them and what they return. So
Cool.
but that's not really what we're about here today. We are about this menu. So testing and unit testing these was much easier to do because what I did is I took one of our more complicated menus that we were building dynamically using create menu in this old style. It was 1,500 lines of code touching menus. And then after it was called, sometimes it would call an update function, which was also about 1,000 lines of code to change all of the menu states for those menu items. So I had about 2,500 lines of code. And in the new version using collections, it's all in one method. And it's around 400 lines of code, 350 to 400 lines of code if you include documentation and comments. But so it's much easier to read and much easier to manage. And so there's the benefit really of this whole idea was less code, easier to manage, less chance to break things by editing by index. It's a little bit of time save in updating menus because you're only calling the recursive function down lookup once, not on every time you do an update. Yeah, and so now we'll get into the pop-up menu. Please stop me if you have any questions, by the way.
I'll just say just having it be more easily understood and readable, it will just have so much benefit over time. I mean, now that you've worked so much with it, it's probably second nature. But the next developer to look at it, you've solved a problem that would have perpetuated until somebody did something like this, right?
Yep. And so I've converted our main dynamic menu, but I still need to convert some of our static menus. But doing them slowly so I don't break anything.
Yeah.
So here you can see, here's the example that they give for dynamic pop-up menu up in the docs. If you select one of these, yeah, it'll tell you the parameter that you chose. Here's the method that they kind of show up on the docs. You can build this using my menu class though. And here you can define its parameter, what it equals. And so it's returned out of your menu class when you choose that choice. You can even reuse specific elements. You can see I call it here and here. Say you wanted a menu to be reused in the same menu twice. You can call it in here just fine. And so if I run this guy, you see it looks just the same. And if you go down in here, you can see you can recurse down. You can see these elements here match these elements here. If you select any one of them, it will return you back what you chose. And so this makes dynamic menus something we don't use that often in our code base. I'm not sure how many people are using them everywhere. Because they were kind of difficult to set up, many of us don't use them. We just use the simple pop-up menu. But this makes more complicated dynamic menus pretty easy to set up. You can see here it's only what, like 35 lines here to set up this fairly complicated dynamic menu.
I've started using the dynamic pop-up menus a lot more in applications, just because the old pop-up menus, you know, the second you try to do anything more complicated, then it's you know, you're outside of that the capabilities, and you know, having anything nice like, I think, icons and you know,
It's
the
very difficult, yeah.
hierarchical layers. Yeah. Have you have you started doing the what they're calling the object and collection literal initialization? You know,
That's not in our version yet. I have played
Oh,
with it
okay.
in the V20s and the
Yeah.
R3 release.
Yeah,
Really excited about that.
it's very nice, and it's something that will make your simple code even simpler, just
Yeah.
with how
This
you're writing.
becomes a lot easier to read when
Yeah.
instead of calling new object, you just have brackets.
Yeah, no, it's actually really nice to work with. So it'll be you know, it's steps in the right direction, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I did notice that that feature will actually make these lines even shorter and easier to
Yeah.
read.
Yeah.
So I was really excited about that. This line becomes, instead of this, it becomes pretty simple. You look,
Right.
you know, do that.
Right. Yeah, and they have a separate color for title, you know, for the attribute names, and yeah, it's real nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that sums up basically all the menus changes that I played with here. Some of the nice features of using menus. Then I went, hey, you know what also is kind of like a collection? Hierarchical lists.
Mhm.
And I went, huh, I wonder if I could apply the same kind of thing to hierarchical lists. And so
Travis, before you jump to the hierarchical list, got a question about the M_validate
yes,
method that you call. That basically is using the get menu bar reference current process to get that reference, and then you use that reference to then grab all the menu items in the menu bar, and then from each of those grab each of the items in each of the menu bar you know, menus. You grab all the items. So when you do M_validate, it's just going through and basically walking through 4D's menu data structure, and you just put it into a nice, easy to read collection.
yep. Yep, you summed it up perfectly. So I was going over the lines while you were saying them here.
Another command I did not know exists: get menu bar reference. I have the same situation in one application which has dynamic menus, and as you're adding and removing items from menus, I have to keep track of, you know, do item 5 or is it item 7, all those kind of things. And
It's a lot of time waste.
this way you just reference names and just scan the whole data structure until you find the thing that you want to delete.
Yep.
And a much more efficient way of dealing with it. I've learned a bunch of new stuff today that I didn't know these commands existed.
Thanks. Yeah. And then as I said in the as you were saying, yeah, that's how the validate works. The update one uses the same commands here, but it does the I have a filter here based off, do we have any updates at this current level? If I don't, then it'll skip that level, go down to the sub levels.
Nice.
So if you, even though you recursively check all the menu items, it'll only look for ones that, it'll only recurse across the ones that actually have updates that need to be applied.
Saving a few milliseconds here and
Saving a few milliseconds here and there. Yep.
And with the find and sorted array.
Oh yeah, yeah. I
is,
sort them because yeah, finding and sorted is much faster.
way faster. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you're getting much speed benefit on an array of 30 items sorted
Yeah.
as opposed to just walking them down. But yeah, saving a few milliseconds again.
Little savings here and there matter when you have 1,200 clients connected.
Mhm.
So yeah, so that's menus. Thanks for stopping me, Tim. So we'll get to now hierarchical lists. So up, I took what was mostly in the documents up there. I didn't create the data structure that they had. I kind of just injected the values that they have in the doc to build a menu item or a hierarchical list. So if you look up append to list and you go look at the docs, this kind of follows that, this example here. I just don't have the data associated. I wanted to make it small to share it around to everybody. So here, I'll build it. Of course, it popped up here. So here's the nice little hierarchical list. You can see in this case, it's fairly simple to build. But if I go to the actual docs here, I'll pull it up here. There we go. Oop.
It's reevaluating that line there. Yeah, there you go.
There we go. So you can see here they have this data structure. They build this here, then they build in this long, lots of documentation and comments here. They'll build this nice little hierarchical list.
And
So
it's-
this matches that. You can see it just matches this. And so here the code looks kind of complicated, probably due to all the commenting. It's a lot of good description here for somebody who doesn't know what's going on, but you'd probably not have this many comments in your code, but this is still a bit of work here to do for a fairly simple hierarchical list. And so what if you wanted to make something really complicated, nested hierarchical lists and pictures and all the other commands that you can apply to lists? I said, well, I could probably use the same model and apply those using attributes. And as I recurse down, just call it recursively. And so I build that list here. I'll use the class. So I had show both a method and a class version. I'll use the class. And here you could see a more complicated hierarchical list. It's got italicization, it's got bolding, it's got colors, it's got pictures, got nested hierarchical lists.
glorious.
And the code for it's not too bad.
It's so easy to get lost in these kind of code, like with the list, hierarchical lists and the menus. And I honestly think, so many developers probably have stayed away from those chapters, those features just because of that over time, or only dabbled in it.
I went and searched for examples in our code base of hierarchical lists. I found 2.
In a big application, right?
in the nearly 1.6 million lines that we have
Yeah.
2 hierarchical lists.
Yeah, no,
And one was for something that's not even in production. It's just for developers.
we have plenty of them at the museum, and again, it's one of these cases where just you fear getting too deep into that code because it's gnarly looking, but this would really simplify it.
And that's it. That's all I have to show here. So we can stop for questions now. If anybody has any additional questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you enable and disable menu items when windows become activated?
Yes.
If you move between windows?
Yes.
Do you have do you use one method to do that? Like I have a method called update menu bar.
We have
And-
one for like every specific menu. We have like an update menu bar for invoices, like
Okay,
one of our main modules or processes.
so you know which menu bar is running and based on what window is activating, and
Yep.
then you call that specific menu. Okay.
Yep. We have
Checking.
some where you're like, if you're in read write mode, it'll disable a bunch of menu items. If you're in read only mode, it'll enable a bunch of menu items.
Just want to
So-
see if there's any new little things that a way of doing it that's the way I do it too, other than I just have one big update menu bar method that knows the mode that you're in and the table that you're in and all those things, and it's a big long multi-hundred line thing with all kinds of case statements in it to know what to do.
The nice thing about doing it this way, using the menu class here, is you could make something like this, where you're building the menu bar right here. And then on the other side, if you had a parameter that you passed into this large method, say update is the parameter. If you were updating, you call update and apply just your updates. And that's how I combined our initialization and our update features across that very large dynamic menu into one method. So you would have, it would look like this. If this is your parameter that you're passing in, so it'd be and so then if you are, I have this backwards. So if you're updating, you would call the update function on your menu. And if you were not updating, you were building the menu bar fresh, like on a module starting or a window starting, then you would just call create. So then you could apply all your updates in one method along with your builder. And so now your builder and your updater are no longer two methods, they're one method. You call it whatever your module is or whatever your menu name is.
Mm-hmm.
For us, we have one for like our invoices module, we call like looks like this, menu invoices, and it looks very similar to this. This part's a little more complicated. It's lots of lines, building your menu. This is less lines, but it's all the updates that you apply to your menu. So then you know any change to menus happens in one method. You don't have to correlate between two methods or three methods or. So that's how we do it here right now. So any other questions?
I'll just make one little comment, Travis. I enjoy watching other developers program because I sometimes pick up on little tidbits on how they code and things like that. And when you were moving things around in the if else, you had it backwards. You had to copy those two
Yep.
lines and move them
Yep.
down, and the other two move them up. Did you know
There's a
that
swap function.
if you select a line, click on line 169 to select the whole line. Click to the left of line 169 to select the whole line. In that method right there. Just click on that, select the whole line to the left side. Click on the left side, select the whole line.
Like this?
Yeah. Now hold down the option key and press the down arrow. Just hold down the
Option.
option key and press the down arrow. Now press the Option key and press the up arrow. You can move lines around by highlighting and use the Option key and go up and down. Kirk Brooks showed me that in one of the first 4D method meetings I went to, and I said, "Whoa, how are you moving all those lines around?" I did
That's
not
super
know.
nice.
Yeah.
So that's an easy way to move stuff around. Select the lines, Option key, up and down arrow, and you can move blocks of code real quick.
The other one that I didn't know was like Command Shift and right arrow selects the whole line.
That's a good one too.
Command right arrow brings you to the end of the line. Command left arrow brings you to the front of the line.
If you want a lesson in never touching the mouse and programming in 4D, watch some of Apparij's presentations.
Yeah,
This guy knows every keystroke, and he hardly ever touches the mouse, and he's moving all over, moving code around and copying. I learned a lot just watching his
The
presentation.
one change that got me between like project mode and stuff was you used to be able to like option click on these to bring you to them. It's now Command K brings you to the string. Like you used to be able to like option click on like a form name and it'd bring you to the
Right.
form.
Specifically for forms, yeah, they changed that. I think option L or something, or a command L as well does it.
They used to be called layouts for layouts, Command L for open a layout.
Oh, is that what that comes from? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
remember when we had procedures and layouts a long time ago?
I was wondering, yeah. I was thinking that it would also be cool to have another class for a menu line or a menu item. And then you know, as you're adding, you just instantiate the class with you know, the properties that you want to set.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
You could easily make that a class or just like a simple object builder method.
sure, yeah, and then you know, have menu item specific you know, things that you could include in the class. But yeah, no, it's great. I tell
And
Um, if I could make a suggestion, Travis.
Yeah.
It looks like it's begging to have a UI to.
yeah, I've heard that one in the
Yeah.
that gets a little trickier because then you're having like UI, you edit the UI and it updates code, and then you have to like validate that code. It's doable. It's definitely doable. I mean, I actually do it here in the project with this demo case chooser, but yeah, it's definitely doable. I didn't put it here because that's a little more complicated work.
Yeah, but you're like, for instance, you have some kind of rules, I guess you could say, as to whether a particular item or menu is going to appear, you know, depending on the person's role and stuff like that. And then you have a function that the option is going to perform if it gets chosen. So you could probably come up with a internal like data structure to make the menus work the way you want. Like that's how I've done my menus, is I have a little UI that I can just build, and then those things aren't in code. They're kind of visual for you, and it's easier for you to maintain it later. But just looking at yours, it looks like it's a perfect candidate for.
Yeah, building a UI front for it.
Yeah. I just love being able to see it as a collection, and that tells you so much. Otherwise, you know, it's very difficult to. You just have to see it in a user interface in order to see what the result was. There was no other way to extrapolate the code while you're working on it. You know, to say, you know, what's the current state of a menu or a hierarchical list.
Yep. There are still some caveats with it. The control key, like the get menu item shortcuts won't return back the control key for like Macs.
Mm.
But they're very few and subtle caveats there. But while I was building this menu class and converting it, Kirk was actually with us here at Sweetwater, and Kirk liked the idea, and so he took it and built this one. I attached here his menu class that he made. I told him I'd probably add to it eventually, and that's where I added this validate debugger and a couple of these other functions. But his is very simple. If you want to just implement class menu handling, you don't need all the debugging or unit testing. This one's actually pretty light. Doesn't have my custom property for checking menu item state and a couple other things, but I did attach that here. So
Cool.
and then in here, if you ever have any questions, I've made a lot of documentation on the menu class itself of how it works. I have links to the functions,
That's brilliant.
parameter descriptions. So I really leveraged the markdown documentation here. So
Oh my God, this documentation is included. This is the first one I've ever seen, Brent, in 4DMethod. Someone
Right.
actually included the documentation in the database. This is fantastic.
So
A lot of time. You didn't do this in 10 minutes, did you?
I did it in about 30 minutes to an hour.
Oh, okay. Well, you're faster than I am in building.
It wasn't too bad. I've been messing around with the markdown documentation, so I have pictures here associated so you could see like this is how the debugger works right here.
This is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
And it shows just what I showed in the demo. So it shows you some of the nested menus and how you build them. And
What's your preferred markdown editor?
I like VS Code. VS
Oh,
Code's
okay.
pretty good. That makes it easy since the 40 extensions in there too. So
Yeah,
uh
brilliant.
but I'm a monster. I'll do it right here in 40.
Hey, Trav, I have a question.
Yes.
So you, in fact, you were hovering over release menu on that other screen. So did you come up with a good way to automatically release dynamic menus when you're not using them, or did you think of something to handle that?
When you're not using them.
Well, I mean, the one caveat for doing dynamic menus, which I've done a lot for years, is that you got to remember to release them, and especially if you start adding on a bunch of submenus and stuff like that.
It can create a memory leak.
Well,
So-
yeah, although it's pretty light. I mean, it's you can't ignore it, but on the other hand, it's like you don't need,
I release submenus here
right?
in the builder. So the only
just
one
do
you
that in
have
the
to
builder.
explicitly release is the one you built with the menu.
Right.
And so then you could just release it at the end. For me, like dynamic menus are usually one-time callers.
Okay. Yeah.
So I would usually call the dynamic menu, then immediately release it.
Okay. Yeah, that's
So
what I'm doing too.
honestly, I would probably do this. Or I do
Yeah, you
this.
get the result, and then do the release.
I'd probably do this. I'd get the result into something here.
Except, yeah, and then do the return. Okay,
And then-
yeah, that's the same form I've used too. So
So
I was just wondering if you thought of something smarter.
if you are using them for single time use, this is how I do it. Because then you know the release is handled by the call to the dynamic menu, and then you don't have to call 2 extra lines. So-
And oh, good, add is still here. You know that discussion that we were that Brent was touching on a couple minutes ago about creating like a class for a menu item. Something that I'd love to hear some official 4D input on is the relative expense of like spinning up a class versus spinning up an object versus a scalar or local variable. You know, because folks, I hear that talked about in a lot of trainings. I mean, you know, everybody talks about, oh, well, you know, this can be more expensive than that. But I never hear any real specifics about really understanding just how expensive something is. Because I agree with Brent. I mean, I think this, you know, if I were doing this, if I were writing what Travis wrote, I'd probably just have a little, you know, one or two or three function class for a menu item, or maybe more, because that makes sense. And I've just gotten really used to doing that. But then it does make me wonder, well, gee, if I, so is it a big deal to have a couple thousand of those? Would it be a big difference between a couple thousand objects and a couple thousand simple classes? Just
Class is just an extension of object, though. So I
well,
mean,
that's my idea. Yeah, so that's my thinking. It's like, well, if I would put it in an object, then does a class really add any overhead that I need to worry about?
it's marginal probably at best, because you really the only thing you're adding is the attributes for functions.
Yeah, but that's exactly my question. It's like, is that, I agree. It strikes me as marginal. I just
Yeah.
kind of like,
It should be marginal.
it should be marginal, but who's ever gotten bit by that?
Yeah. I assume it's marginal.
And Ed, I don't want to put you on the spot of like, unless you,
So I did do some speed testing with Kirk, because I was concerned about that exact thing.
yeah,
And in my testing
see it.
in 19.6, the speed difference here between using a class versus using a method,
yeah,
so like building the objects versus building a class,
right.
the speed difference was nanoseconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So
it's, I
that's
mean,
one class instantiation. I don't know what it would be if every menu item was a class.
Yeah.
no, I mean, we have heard it over the years, like, oh, pointers are expensive, it takes time to make pointers and that kind of thing. And yeah, I wonder the same thing, just because we're all starting to use objects for everything. I don't know. Ad, do you have any additional input on that?
Well, I usually go for simple rules, especially when you're dealing with UI. If you can't feel it, then it's not that big of a deal. So UI usually takes a little bit longer, right?
Yeah.
Versus some process that you're running in the background, you might want something to run much faster. UI takes some time to redraw. Most of the time, the overhead that you're suffering or having to endure doesn't even come close to having any negative impact to the user experience.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably an extra little bit of memory overhead for a class. The class probably got a little bit more memory impact than an object. But again, we've got so much memory that what's a K or a few hundred bytes, it's.
Yeah, and this is on the client or standalone anyways, but in this case, the client where, once they disconnect, it's gone anyways. It's not like you're bogging down the server.
I'm sure you could probably test this by turning on the aren't there profiling tools in 4D? You could turn on that log and you could track as the code ran how long each of the the commands took. So you could probably profile this if you wanted to write some code to analyze a log and run the code and see what the impact is. Right, Ed? You could probably profile.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to weigh pros and cons, right? I mean, having classes kind of allow you to write your code in a more elegant way and then kind of encapsulate all of the things that you want in a single class. In a
Encapsulation.
way that you can manage. It's like I said, if you cannot, as a user, cannot tell by looking at it if it's slower, why does it matter?
No, I mean the biggest payoff for this is clearly in the maintenance and understandability and whatnot. It's and that's a big payoff in a large application, that you can look at something and not require years of experience or days of time to understand what you're looking at.
Well, one thing I want to add, I'm looking at the Travis code. I'm actually doing a lot of the similar things in my own project too. That is, it's more of a definition-driven functionality. You build your JSON that contains all of your data definition, your instruction, and then you use that, put it into the code that you built in the way that you can process that definition. So when it comes to maintaining that information, it's much easier to, rather than having to go and make changes to the code, you just change the data, let's let it be done with it.
It's very Codely-esque, where all of the instructions go in JSON to the front end, and then the front end interprets the that works with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And as I said, when you get this project, as soon as you start it up, it'll pop up this, which is all those cases. And it'll pop up this, which shows you what each of the cases mean with a little description here. And this method will pop up. So
Great.
be able to see everything.
No, great style with the demo, Travis, as well. I like your menu for the options for the different examples. The menu of menus, so to say. Very nice demo, and it's great to that you're able to put all the effort into extracting the logic and the examples from the code at Sweetwater. I know that it's not always easy to do that, and it certainly takes time. That's right, as Kirk said, he's setting a high bar for the quality of the demo, and it's and also the what he's made available as far as sample code and shared classes. So thanks again, Travis.
Thank you. Thank you again for having me.
Great job.
Thanks, Trav.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any other questions in the meantime? I'm just gonna pop up my slides once again. Now is a good time to ask Travis anything, or you can always ask on the forum on the dedicated post that that I made for this meeting, or reach out to him directly, or in the happy hour.
Yeah, I do attend happy hour probably less frequently than most. I have two little toddlers that always battle me when I get home at 6:30 here. So
Yeah.
I'll be there every month or so.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's great content, and hopefully it gives all of us some extra inspiration for sharing similar kinds of approaches in their applications. But just again, thank you, Travis. Thanks to everybody at 4D. Thanks, Ad. I'll correct your slide before we're just letting it sit there for in perpetuity. Thanks, Jim, for all of his 4D news and participation. If there's nothing else, I'm just going to go ahead and
We're still doing, Jim, subject, we're still doing 4D Summit sometime this year in the United States, or 4D World Tour.
We're still talking about that, Tim.
Is that still planned sometime?
Yeah, we're still talking about it. Yeah.
Okay, not definite. But
It's
anyways,
the 40th anniversary, so you have to.
We have to do something.
that's right. Yeah, it's a big year, big 40.
It is a big year.
Yeah.
Ad and I have been here 23 of those 40 years.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Right, Ad? You're the same as me, I think. Yeah.
Yep.
You guys started right out of high school, right?
I wish.
All right. Well, I'm going to stop the recording here. Thanks again to everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Brent. Thank you, Travis. Good presentation. Appreciate it.